As Sister Dalton was speaking, I had a little memory flash into my mind of my own children and their experience in seminary. I think their seminary teachers had a real influence on them. And one way to think about that influence is to remember what Enos said when he was in the woods praying, and he remembered what his father had taught him, and he used a phrase that I think really helps us understand how to keep the world out of the hearts of our children, and that is, he uses the phrase where he said his father brought him up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And I think those two things are really crucial for seminary teachers especially, but also institute teachers, where you want to nurture, and so you love, you support, encourage, you cheer, you love them, and they're just great. But you also have the admonition of the Lord, so you set high standards for them. So if you see them as a seminary teacher, and you can tell that the world's in there, just by the way they're dressed or how they act, it's good to sit them down, maybe even one-on-one, and say, what are you doing? You know, set the standards high for them. Love them, but don't let them believe that anything's okay. And don't fall prey to the idea that, well, they have their agency, so we don't really need to tell them anything. We need to set high standards for them. We want them to become missionaries. We want them to be worthy to go to the temple, to make sacred covenants there, to be an eternal companion to someone, to be great mothers and fathers in Zion. And we need to set the standards high. And I think seminary teachers especially have a real impact. If you're in the nurture mode, there might be a tendency to want to become their friends and really have them really like you. So you're worried about maybe calling them to account. But I think seminary teachers have a real impact and can set the standards high and say, you know, you're a son and daughter of God. You need to act like it, look like it, talk like it, be like it. I think the teachers can really have an impact on kids that way. And that helps them start to see the differences between what the world's trying to do. Because a lot of the effects of the world are very subtle. And we need to help our children see that and choose the right and avoid, you know, slipping down that slippery slope that starts with attitudes and dress and then slips into pornography and off into immoral behavior and darkness. And I think seminary teachers can see that. They see the kids every day. They look at them. They can see. The Spirit teaches them, this kid needs help right here. You can grab onto them and say, what are you doing? What are you thinking?
So a balance between the nurture and the admonition.
Yeah.
And hopefully teachers would have that proper balance and not fall off either.
On either side, exactly.
Yeah, thank you. Very
I
good.
had a personal experience when I was in 7th grade with that kind of thing. I went into the library with all of my friends, and everyone picked out a romance novel and went up to the librarian to check it out, myself included. And she checked everyone out, got to me, and she looked at my book, and then she looked up at me, and she said, I've been watching you. And this is not the kind of book you should be reading, but I have one for you that you should be reading. She reached back and got Pride and Prejudice.
Jane Austen.
Jane Austen, and she said, you read this book and come back and let's talk about it. And just the very realization that someone had been watching me and caring enough that they had already chosen the book that would be, and she raised the level of my taste in that very one thing. I didn't know any better really at that point. Everyone just was reading was good, and she changed me in just that one moment.